This is Marketing Uncomplicated. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the show. I have Nathan Yeung, founder of Find Your Audience, who has over 10 years of experience in the B2B marketing sector. He has worked with top Canadian companies like Constellation Software and Popcom, and has been engaged by Shark Tank's Robert Herjavec. I hope I pronounced that right. Robert, if you're out there and listening, with 18 years of SEO experience and 9+ years as a performance digital media buyer. We'll get into what that means. Nathan has been driving growth for over 50 clients. This is awesome to hear, particularly in the B2B SaaS. So SaaS is system as a service. He has also served as a guest lecturer at UC Berkeley and St. John's University. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you so much for having me, Sasha.
Likewise, thanks for joining. So what I always like to do is take a step back and kind of understand where my guests have been prior to where they are today. So what kind of is your path and your growth trajectory leading up to the company that you started, and that road less traveled, if you will.
Very less traveled, very unorthodox. I went to school for marketing. I was a VP of finance at the age of 21. I was an operational consultant for about 4 or 5 years. Then I was a CEO of an ad technology company, and then I've been now running this business for about 7.5 years. So a little bit all over the place. Was very, very privileged and had the opportunity to be in a senior role at a very young age. And I think I learned a lot from that. And kind of along the way, which is why I have a marketing business, is I found marketing really fascinating and I found it incredibly complex, which is why I'm on a podcast right now called Marketing Uncomplicated. And I found that on an intellectual level, I really enjoyed marketing because it is very intellectually stimulating when you do it well. It is generally a problem for almost every organization. And it's definitely not a one size fits all. I think there's definitely an approach that helps people understand how to approach it, where there's kind of like a one size fit all, but in terms of the actual tactical and execution, I think it's very, very much different in every industry.
Yeah. No, I love that. I mean, I think elaborate a little bit of what you said, that it's a problem for most companies, because I definitely want to talk through that in terms of, how companies really struggle with marketing.
I think there's all kinds of struggles. I think there's all kinds of struggles because there's a lack of internal expertise. So it's kind of like, how do you have math when no one knows how to do math? So it's like, how do you have marketing when no one in the organization knows marketing? So how do you
Yes.
build that? So I think building process for any entrepreneur that's listening, as you know, building process is much harder than changing process.
Yeah.
So I think building that marketing process is incredibly difficult for a lot of companies. I think a lot of companies struggle with what their marketing function means to their organization, which is fundamentally because they didn't have anyone consulting at them. So they kind of reactively built the marketing function, or marketing function has become a reactive function that has grown to the point where it is a function. And so therefore does not actually have structure or meaning within the organization.
Yeah.
I think metrics are misleading. And I think a lot of people kind of follow the herd when it comes to metrics, and they don't really understand how metrics should apply to their business. So they sometimes measure their metrics wrong. And then I think there's just a general lack of guidance because marketing is complex in the sense that I would argue, and I would love to actually have a debate on a panel of this someday, but I feel like marketing as a function likely has the most required technical skill sets out of any function, including even developers.
Very true.
And that's just because anything new and shiny always ends up falling somewhere inside of marketing, which means every year we're forced to learn something new, or we're in charge of something new, when many parts of the organization aren't.
Yeah.
They're not forced with that or tasked with that kind of problem.
Very true. And I think it's moving faster than every year. I think it's now every 6 months, something, especially with like AI kind of hitting, not that AI hasn't been around from a technology standpoint, but I mean, I think with it just getting louder, everyone's like, what are all these platforms that are coming out? Are they good? Are they bad? Should we test? Should we not test? I like that you say also from an internal standpoint, it's, a lot of businesses don't quite understand marketing. And really it's not even just, especially for like small businesses and startups, in terms of, who do I hire? I just got like funded by a VC. I'm going to go out and I'm going to get a CMO, when you actually don't need a CMO, and you can do a lot of the work hiring externally, but then also having somebody internal that could be a lot more junior level, but has the kind of the grasp on, how to manage potentially like third-party vendors that you're working through. Which brings me to the point, the size of the companies that you work with. A lot of folks struggle with trying to find out whether they need to be hiring internally versus externally. Let's talk a little bit about that from a technical standpoint, because you can break it up very nicely in terms of, you can start with these different types of skill sets from an external standpoint, and then you can eventually bring them in once your ROI caps at a certain point. But let's break it down from skill set and need based on a company's like marketing push.
So I'll start high level. I will always say that if you can't afford 3 full-time employees in marketing, you're likely not going to see the cost benefit of actually having them internal.
Yeah.
The reality is that a majority of the time when you have a marketing function that's smaller than that, you're often handicapping yourself by hiring people who are not proficient at the technical skill sets that you require. And if you are, you might just be one of the very few people that either A, hired someone that came from literally a copycat company, aka competitor,
Yeah.
who hopefully has a successful marketing operations, or B, you're reactively kind of filling needs that you find within the organization, not really looking at it from a strategic perspective, and then finding that out later and being kind of unhappy with performance.
Yeah.
When it comes to building a function, I would say, and sorry, this is a plug, but my entire business has been built that I'm going to be better than any senior manager you ever is going to be your first hire, because that's exactly how we price our model at. So we price our model at retainers anywhere between $70,000 to $80,000, but we're going to provide you the technical skill sets across not only strategy, myself assisting and setting up that strategy, but you're going to have access to professional content writers who are full-time. You're going to have access to a very large creative team full-time. You're going to have access to my web developer full-time. You're going to have access to my media buyer full-time. And so you're getting all these prongs that are a part of your marketing flywheel, if we want to use HubSpot's term.
Yeah.
And you're getting it when you need it, because this is the other thing. You don't need all of these skill sets all at the same time. You kind of need them in cycles. Right. So
yeah. And please plug away, by the way, because we're going to get into the details of your business. So
yeah. And so, sorry. And so what's really interesting is if I'm forced into a position where someone's go, Nathan, we really want an internal, and they don't want to change their mind, I go, look, you have 2 choices. I would always recommend that your first senior person always be a product marketer. And the reason is I want someone who actually is spending a ton of time making sure that you have product market fit, but more importantly, making sure that they're translating your product into marketing materials that really make sense, that are sales enablement materials.
yeah.
So that product marketer isn't going to be the best at generating demand generation, but they're going to be the best at increasing the productivity of your sales team, which you likely already have in place. And I think that to me is a really, really important first hire if I was to be forced to actually make an internal hire.
For B2B.
For B2B.
Just to go back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. And for any other company that's open to the idea, still wants someone internal, but is willing to the idea of an agency, I would definitely go with a coordinator, because really what you want is you want an organization like me who's going to be running the function for you. But I will say it's always more efficient when I have someone internal who's helping me push the tasks through, because there's something about having someone who is a team member saying, hey, where is this? Versus me, the external agency, saying, hey, where is this? So having an internal coordinator certainly increases the efficiency of getting things done, because there is something that can't be replaced when I'm purely an external person.
Yeah. And it's feet on the ground. That is your like internal link to kind of be the force, as you said, to move these projects through, kind of like a project manager / marketing coordinator, like, to work with these third parties. Agreed.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let's then talk about Find Your Voice, and let's plug away and like understand, what was the aha moment where you came to realize that there was a gap in the market and this is something I need to really kickstart, and then kind of your trajectory and your growth up to the 50 clients.
So I think one of the things that's just been really interesting is as we've been growing, and when I was growing myself as a person and going through all these different companies, one of the things that I recognized that what marketing was a constant problem, right? On a finance perspective, marketing was always being scrutinized. On an operational perspective, people didn't understand how to work with marketing. there's always this overwhelming kind of overwhelming need to analyze marketing.
Yeah.
So there's a couple core issues. Like one, everyone thinks they can do marketing, which is an overconfidence issue, which is widespread. Two, we oversimplify marketing because we're biased by nature. We have accessibility and availability bias, which means we remember the best marketing, which means we think marketing is easy, even though that best marketing probably took tons of money and tons of time to create. And we oversimplify things, right? So the whole thing that I just recognized was there's a lot of people that have this problem, and then there's no perfect solution out there, because even if I was just purely a strategy consultant, it actually still doesn't make sense. So let me let me do a discovery with you and give you this plan, and then I'm going to give you the people who are handicapped in marketing that hire someone to help them figure out their marketing to then go hire people to do the marketing plan that I just gave you, which also doesn't really make sense, because that's like a doctor telling you, it's like, okay, you need knee surgery. Here's your problem in your knee. Go find the orthopedic surgeon who's going to do that for you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like,
exactly.
Well, that doesn't really make sense, because it's like, well, why don't you refer me to the orthopedic surgeon that you know that can do the problem? But it's like, oh no, my job is just to tell you you have problems and that here's are the solutions. But I don't actually want to give you the person who does the solution. That's not my job. So I just recognized that there was this bit of a gap where there should be this fractional offering. So you've probably seen there's tons of fractional officers now, CFOs, CTOs, CMOs. So essentially what my business originally started off was a fractional CMO business, but I just recognized it was really stupid, because I do all these plans and I do all this ideation, and then it would just fall onto the client and they would just fumble it.
Yeah.
Right. And it made no sense. So I was like, I need to build a team to help execute. So not only am I going to help you build that foundation, and then you don't need that much time from me, right? You don't need that strategy time anymore. And then for the next 6 to 8 months or 9 months, we'll execute. And I thought that made more sense. And essentially that's how I came to what we call in strategy, the white space, where I thought there was an opportunity for us to grow.
Nice. And how far in did you realize that you needed to have the team to execute on the strategy? Because I'm sure you were dealing with a lot of companies that didn't have an internal team or didn't know where to go with this amazing plan. So did you kind of support them from a bootstrap standpoint and, find consultants here and there to kind of build that on? And then you're like, okay, I need to go out and get my own kind of dedicated team.
Yeah, I think I kind of knew about that just even from my first engagements, because it always came to, it's like, okay, well, now what? Right? It was always like a now what?
Yeah.
And the reality is that we want a more simple solution. So it became just easier for me to know that if I had the strategy, it would be very easy for me to naturally lean into a longer term engagement where we would essentially be actioning that. And so I would say very early on, it became very evident that, using consultants, using freelancers was not going to be the best solution. And so therefore we built our team. So we started off at like 4 or 5 people. Pre-COVID, we went to 16 pretty quick. COVID happened, really, really hindered our growth. So we kind of stabilized. We had to lay off some people. And then after COVID, we went right back up. So now I think we're at 26, 27 employees.
Wow, that's amazing. And the employees that you have, are they stateside or are they international? Are they all over the world? Are they global?
All the senior members are local in the sense of North America, and then all of our additional staff is everywhere. So I wouldn't put them in one place.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what happened because of COVID, because COVID forced us from an in-person environment into a very, very remote environment. So we had built the business to be in person, and there were efficiencies around that. In my truthful perspective of running a business, there are there's lots of efficiencies, especially when it comes to creative being in person. And then because of COVID, we had really changed the way we looked at operations, changed the way we look at efficiencies to allow us to work remotely and to allow us to work in that environment. So now we don't have a constraint. So we do hire people. And in the last couple of years, we actually have also been pushing for asynchronous work, which means not everyone is necessarily working 9 to 5 in our client hours.
Yeah, got it. Talk to me a little bit about, I know nobody wants to hear the word COVID again, but I do like to talk about how businesses pivot, during that time, because you've obviously, thrived past COVID and you continue to grow and so on and so forth. What were the things that you needed to pivot on during COVID as a business?
I think it was purely just how we communicated with our clients, right? We had lots of in-person meetings, we had lots of presentations, and that just changed the remote kind of like overnight.
Yes.
And also knowing how to keep our clients happy in that environment. I think the number one reason why people fire agencies is typically because of quote unquote not being proactive, which basically means not being heard. And
Or
I think
communicating.
we now went into a digital format, which of course, as you can only imagine, made it even more impersonal to have those relationships. So it was really that pivot of understanding, like, how do we make sure our client understands that we are working in their best interest? How do we communicate that with them? And how do we make sure that they feel like we are doing that? And I think that was the biggest challenge that we had to pivot on. And of course, just, I think just naturally all from that came from how do we communicate? So changing our cadences of how we communicate, what emails are we doing, why, how are we following up, all that kind of stuff. So I think it really made us look into those processes a lot more. And that's where we had to change.
Yeah. So really it's just processes that were more enhanced in place just due to the fact that the situation that took place. I like that. Tell me a little bit about some of the barriers in terms of, working with clients, because I want the audience to hear a little bit about the differences between client X, client Y, and give us a little bit of like some of those case studies and how you kind of move through the hurdles of those. Granted, we are in a B2B space here, but it would be interesting because not every business is created equal, even when they are in the same industry. And even the audience as well could be very different and could be variant just based on the product and the service that they're selling.
So every client that we work with, we try to dumb it down to a couple different things, and
Yeah.
they're just constraints. So the way we work with clients, we're always looking at it is, what is their human capital constraint? What proficiencies do they have internally? Their financial straits, how much money do we actually have to play with outside of a retainer? And then 3, what's our time constraint? Meaning, how much time do we have to perform?
Yeah.
And, if we want to do another one is for how much overconfidence does the organization have? And what I mean by that is it's very often that we'll run into organizations that hire us, but still want to control us. So I go, did you hire us to be an action taker, or did you hire us to be a leader?
Yes.
And I think that's the biggest problem. And the biggest, the first 3 are really, really easy. I think the 4th one is the one that's overlooked.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of companies hire and they don't actually quite really understand why they are hiring. So they handcuff, or they put the companies that they hire in a position for failure because you're not actually allowing them to do their job. So
Yes.
let's put this in another perspective. You would never hire a structural engineer and ask him to make a pillar thinner just because it was aesthetically not pleasant enough in that location.
Yeah.
But for some reason, no matter the organization, and this is widespread, Sasha, this is not just like any organization.
Yep.
I'm going to say 99% of organizations. It doesn't matter what department you're in. For some reason, in every department, there's always one person who thinks they know marketing.
Yeah.
we are the one function where on a responsibility swim lane, people cross over however much they for whatever reason.
Yeah, so much.
Yeah, and so that causes a ton
Strain
of problems.
Yeah.
And essentially, I would say we have a wide gamut of clients where I have to have expectation setting where I go, you want me to be an action taker? Just recognize that if I'm an action taker, KPIs are meaningless to me now.
Yeah.
Just recognize that. Because if you want someone to drive KPIs, you're not allowed to be a leader in that function.
Yeah.
That function needs to be a leader in itself, because then they would be accountable. But if you are going to be telling them what to do, telling them to execute, telling them the creative, telling them the messaging, then you, the person who's saying that, is accountable for your own KPIs. And so therefore you have hired an action taker. And I think a lot of times clients will blame their marketing company for intel that's a shiny object that they read on LinkedIn, force their marketing team to do it, and then blame them for their results.
Yes.
And because they'll go, I saw someone else do it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say that's almost like 95% of the time that happens. Yeah.
So, and then I have clients who are actually receptive to this idea. And I tell my clients all the time, I was like, you're hiring me as if I am a team member, as if I am your marketing team. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to pay me a salary, which is my retainer.
Yes.
You're going to give me a budget.
Yes.
You're going to give me KPIs, and then you're going to fire me
Yeah.
if I don't hit your KPIs.
Yeah.
Okay? Just like an employee. So that's how you're going to treat me. That's how you should look at us. But the one thing that you also have to recognize is I have far more marketing experience than you. It's very likely that I do. And so therefore, let me make autonomous decisions. I'm not going to make material decisions without your approvals, but recognize that it's an approval, not a request for change.
Yes. Yes. It's an approval and not a request for change, which is so important to like differentiate.
Yeah. Totally. And to be honest, the companies that we have that relationship with, we do great with.
Yeah.
The companies that we have kind of these middle of the ground relationships, we still do relatively well, but that's usually only if we're aligned.
But there's a stopgap, as you're saying, because the success can be hindered based on the delay and the pushback and the, I don't know, are we doing this right? Should we not be doing this? And so on and so forth, which is, I mean, they're, like you said, they're setting themselves up. They're setting you up to fail because they don't know, they think they know why they hired you, but then they don't want to let go. And then they're kind of grasping onto everything. And then it's just a downward spiral from there.
It is. And there's all kinds of reasons why, having death by committee is the death of the function, because they don't notice or recognize how much it impacts the operational process. They don't recognize that when we have multiple stakeholders that are completely outside of the function, I'm not going to name the client name, but I'm no longer working with them. But I said to the CFO, I said, I don't tell you what payroll service you should use. Yeah. So I don't understand why you tell me what color I'm supposed to be putting on this.
Yeah.
Like, I understand that you have a preference, but you understand that you're paying me for a professional opinion.
Yes, yes.
So I'm paying you to figure out your payroll service. I'm not telling you that the payroll service that you're using is wrong.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's always interesting, and they don't recognize that delays the work product by days, if not sometimes even weeks.
Yeah.
And so therefore the marketing function then gets even more handicapped in the fact that they can't even show that they are even producing final assets.
Yeah.
Because they're still in production.
Yeah. True. Absolutely true. And it's the thing that I like to coin, like, I mean, and I'm not coining it actually. I mean, it's know thyself as a founder, know thyself as in who you are and where you stand within your business and like where you want to see your business grow. Because I think if you don't, and this goes down to like you're a personality trait, right? And it's funny because a lot of the times people are like, oh my gosh, like marketing is so much fun. And it is. Listen, it's a lot of fun. We're here because we want to uncomplicate it. We want to make it more simplistic for our listeners to understand, small business owners, so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, sometimes we're also therapists, right? Because it's the concept of like just everything that you talked about. You know, it's like, how do we bring the client from X, Y, and Z? It's also us trying to understand the personality trait of the client that we're working with, who we're working with, what level of convincing do we need to do? And I say convincing because, or negotiating, because it's really kind of pushing them into, especially if they're a founder that don't necessarily want to take the risk and like have the trust. And it's like that trust isn't coming from the level of like whether they've hired us and knowing that we can do the job or not, but it's instilled within them. So I think, a lesson learned here is know thyself as a founder, know what you want for your business, do the research, know who you're hiring, and whoever you're hiring and you're paying, let them do the job. Otherwise, do it yourself and do it 30% not great. And then realize that you're fumbling at that point versus when you actually have somebody that's going to help you not fumble.
Exactly. And that's also why now, especially if someone comes to us for a full retainer, I will have the very blunt conversation saying, these are the 3 things that we need for success. Are you willing to do this? Yes or no?
Yes.
And if they say no, I'm going to have to give them a whole bunch of more caveats. And then I will say, then we are not accountable for KPIs. Are you going to be okay with that?
Yeah.
And
do you sometimes I have recognized that every time we're okay with that? Like, have you?
No, some clients aren't, and when they aren't, then I go, we can't work together. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Because I've dealt with enough clients. Because here's the other thing: is that when we're action takers, to be honest, most of the time our clients just piss off my team
Yes.
because they'll ask for what I'm going to say, stupid things.
Yeah.
And when they ask for stupid things, my team gets annoyed because they're like, this is stupid. And I
Yeah.
go, I know it's stupid, but that's what they want. And now we're action takers because I didn't do good enough job qualifying them as a client.
Yeah.
So it's my fault. And
Yeah.
see, as a good leader, I'll admit that.
Yeah.
And so that's also why now I won't, because I just recognize not only does it piss off my team, which doesn't do great for cultural morale, it inhibits their productivity, which means it inhibits my other clients' productivity. So by bringing on a bad client, it actually impacts my other clients.
True, because then you're wasting more time. And I don't want to say wasting, but you're spending more time nurturing this client who isn't moving kind of like their lever and kind of pushing things forward. And then it's taking away from time where a client is truly invested and wants to move forward and like really is like, wanting to see like growth, right? I'm wondering, like, have you set up an intake form prior to signing on a client to like ask them specific questions and then you judge them on a spectrum? And you're like,
so I
this
don't
one
have
is
an
going to be
intake form, but I do have a discovery form.
This is prior to sign on, correct?
Pardon me?
This is prior to sign on.
Yeah, and a part of the onboarding. So it's a part of onboarding, but I always end up sending it beforehand.
Yeah.
And it gives me a very clear idea as to how problematic it's going to be.
Yeah. That's brilliant. Yes, we are talking about the clients because we do have our own sort of, back end frustrations in terms of dealing in. And obviously when you guys are hiring us and you're spending the money, we want to ensure that you're set up for success. So it behooves us to ensure that, we know what we're working with, to be able to push you guys, past that sort of, gray area sometimes to like, get to a better place.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit. Now we've talked, I don't want to say like the cons, but, sort of kind of, who the clients are that you're working with. Tell me a little bit about some great case studies that you've had and you've experienced working with some clients.
I think some of my favorite case studies are also just like the creative ones where we get to do something really, really fun. So we had a client that was in a very, call it mature industry. There was 3 major market share leaders and we were a new entrant. And when you go into a space like that, you have to kind of come in, you kind of have to go big or go home. So in this one case, the client allowed us or was fully engaged in doing something a little bit, loud is what I would call. So we vinyl wrapped the bus. We had a police motorcade. We went to the largest conference. We invited people to the Red Hot Chili Pepper concert. And so you had this huge commercial bus vinyl wrapped in the brand. You had a motorcade that brought the bus in front of the conference. Obviously, you got to see lots of people load onto that bus. So a lot of people were wondering where they were going. The people on the bus have an amazing experience because it's very rare that they get a motorcade, private escort to an event. And that becomes a very memorable thing. So being a new entrant in a very mature market, that's going to make a lot of conversation. When you have conversation, you get more conversations. So I think that was a great success because it certainly brought this company to market in what I'm going to say a very, very mature market, meaning like these are the same players and have always been. And there's no reason for anyone else to enter.
Yeah.
Other fun case studies that we have is this is outside of our B2B SaaS, but we have done some out of home campaigns that have been really fun. And I had a fun idea of putting billboards upside down.
Okay. Just completely like flipped.
Yes, completely flipped, completely hypothetically wrong.
Yeah.
With some of the language on the billboard being right side up.
Yeah.
And the whole point is I said to them, I was like, 1, you don't have a lot of money. 2, you really want to do out of home. So if you're going to force me to do something, you're going to have to allow me to do something creative.
Yeah.
And so what we did was we put up billboards upside down in order for people to post them and say, how stupid was this? In order for people to recognize then that we had little letters that were right side up and everyone knew that we did it on purpose, but they did it after they posted.
Yeah.
So that was a viral campaign because it was for a location specific neighborhood and it drove a lot of people to knowing that location existed.
Yeah.
And that was really important because the people that were posting it were people in the local area.
Yeah.
And so that was really important. So that was, really fine tuning a small amount of ad spend and trying to maximize its impact. So again, creative and loud, risky, but risky with a plan. And my whole thing is if I can generate conversation, then it works.
Yeah.
My last ones that are B2B SaaS is generally SEO oriented. I tell clients all the time, no one cares about your blog. I'm sorry.
Yes.
No one opens up your website to read the latest corporate news.
Yeah.
They go to news websites for that. So if you're not ranking for SEO, and for every listener that's listening to this, no one cares. No one's reading it. And even if one person did read it, I can guarantee you that one person isn't going to convert anyways. You need like 100 more. So when you're doing SEO, recognize that you need to do it for SEO purposes, which means you need to do it so that you can actually start ranking, which takes a long time.
Yeah.
So if you're not producing anywhere between, call it 4 to 7 articles a week,
Yes.
consistently for about a month and a half,
Yes.
you're not going to be considered an authority. So how are you going to produce all of those at a 10 out of 10? Do you want to write those many articles? No. So you're going to produce quality articles that are about 70% of your SME level of expertise.
That are maximizing the keywords that people are searching for.
Maximizing keywords.
Yeah.
And then when you start seeing traffic, then you're going to take that page and then you're going to make it 100%. You're going to invest the time afterwards. You're not going to invest the time beginning, because this is what I see every company do. And we've done this now across multiple clients. And within 6 months, we'll see a 300 to 400% increase in SEO traffic, which means I've taken 50 visitors up to 220 to 250 users a day, which is huge. This is a day. This is not over a full month, right?
New, yeah.
And from there, you can generate leads. I remember one company, we didn't even do any funnels and they got leads, right? So just purely by volume, they got leads. Yes. And trust me, those articles weren't even edited. So a lot of times these companies have like this spotlight syndrome where they're just like, oh my God, if I post something wrong, everyone's going to think I'm stupid. I was like, yeah, the one person that bothered to click on your article on the 10th page that decided to go to the 10th page to find you.
They're only getting there based on the keyword that popped up.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
for some reason, every CEO thinks your marketing, your homepage, your blog page is someone's homepage every morning they wake up to. It's like, you're not. You're not that special.
No, I completely agree. Important things with SEO is your homepage, making sure that you have all the right keywords for your business on it. And then you're right, like pumping out a ton of articles, because you can't put all of that stuff on your website. But it's like, it's the whole like 80-100% rule. You're never going to be perfect. Get it out at 80%, get it out at 70%. But at least you're going to get something out and you're going to get traffic towards that one article. And hey, maybe that article that you pushed at 70% is probably going to be one of your best performing ones, right?
Yeah.
And you're right. It's just like a fine wine.
Yeah, we've taken companies who are producing zero, marketing qualified leads to taking 2 or 3 marketing qualified leads a day.
Yeah, that's
based
fantastic.
Purely on organic SEO, because they allowed us to do our job.
Yes.
They trusted me when I said this. No one cares.
Yes. And organic SEO is the foundation of marketing. If you're not doing it, you need to be doing it, especially if you are a local business and you want to attract from a local standpoint, It's
a mid to long-term strategy that will always pay dividends.
Yeah, it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
Because it works. It just takes anywhere from 6 to 8 months, right?
It's 3 to 6 months if done well.
Yeah.
3 months, you're going to see results. But when I say results, meaning like you're going to see a positive trend.
Yes.
I would say to see your real results will be in the 3 to 6 month period.
Yes. Agreed. Nathan, this has been great. I do want to leave the audience with some tips from you. What are the best tips that you can, and best advice that you can give to clients looking to sign up an agency? I'd love to hear your advice on that.
To sign up an agency?
Yes. To sign up somebody like you, work with somebody like you, like outside consulting, like, where they are in their business, to figure out this whole sort of realm of like, where do I even begin?
I think the reality is that you need to find, you have 2 choices. You need to find a marketing person that has been in your industry, or you need to find someone like me who has worked in so many industries, I can diagnose industries.
Yes.
You do not want to work with someone who's worked at one job 1 year and done this 3 times in different industries, because I don't think they'll actually have enough experience to actually diagnose. So you have to find someone with lots of industries, lots of experience, or you're going to have to find one person that's in your very specific category and has been doing that for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So when you look for someone to help you, first diagnose that before you even hire them. That's really important, which is why specialization is so important. And then in order for us to provide value, you just have to recognize how much can you afford, one, right? And also, like, what are you looking for? If you are just looking for guidance, then that's our advisory service where you won't get our full service, but you'll essentially, I kind of joke about it. My advisory service is like being your marketing accountability coach.
Yes.
You talk with me twice a month, and essentially I just make sure you're not wasting your time.
Yes.
Right. I'm making sure you're aligned, and I'm not making sure you're not wasting your time. And if you are looking to scale with growth, then you are going to recognize you're going to have to put net dollars in for you to get net dollars back.
Yeah.
So I think really it's just diagnosing where you are in your journey as a business owner and how much growth you want, and then setting forth to find the right agency to work for you. And I would really particularly look at in the fact that it's like, one, are they very industry specific and do they speak specifically to you? And if they're not, then you're going to have to vet that they have so much industry experience and so much, retained relationships, meaning they have done well, that they can prove that they're not industry experts specifically in your market, but they're fundamentally good marketers, which means they know how to diagnose you well.
Yes, totally. So where can everybody find your audience? Find your audience.
Sure. Yeah. So you can find us at www.findyouraudience.online. And or if you just want to talk to me, you can find me on LinkedIn at Nathan Yeung. Spelled Yeung is my last name.
Fantastic. This has been awesome, Nathan. I loved our conversation. Lots of good key takeaways specifically for founders. So this has been wonderful. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sasha.